You know, one of the great things about following the PWHL has been seeing how willing they are to innovate and being such a young league with nothing set in stone and not so many teams and such a history that they have to hold up that they can't go ahead and just try some things out and innovate, try some systems, some scoring systems as we've seen, rule systems, marketing, different things that we haven't seen in larger leagues or leagues that just wouldn't have the ability to kind of turn on a dime and undo their decisions if they wanted to. And that was seen pretty clearly this week when they announced their playoff system. And it was a really interesting, innovative thing that they announced, and not surprising, but what they're going to do is give the team that finishes first out of the 4 playoff teams the option of picking their first round opponent, or what will be the semifinal opponent, because there will only be 2 rounds. And you wouldn't think this is that great of an innovation, but it really could be. If certain teams have finished well against others, they would want to pick the team, of course, that they have good results against. And this is pretty interesting because it means of the 4 teams that finish in playoff spots, the one that finishes first can choose either the 3rd team or the 4th team. I'm not sure why they didn't just go ahead and say you can pick the 2nd place team if you want to. They might be so close in points that you have a better chance against the 2nd place team, or at least a better record against them so far. But it's only the 3rd or 4th, and then obviously the other 2 teams that remain would play each other. So if we just take a snapshot right now of where the league stands, we've got Montreal in 1st, Minnesota 2nd, Toronto 3rd, Boston 4th. That would unfortunately leave Ottawa and New York out of the playoffs in 5th and 6th. So if Montreal finishes first, looking at their record versus the 3 teams, I'm just going to go ahead and put them all in. They have a 2-1 record against Minnesota, an 0-2 record versus Toronto, and a 1-1 against Boston. And digging just a little deeper, okay, if we take Minnesota out of the equation, although they actually have a better record against them, but they are 0-2 with 1 shootout loss to Toronto, so 1 regular and 1 shootout. And then Boston, they have an overtime win and an overtime loss, so those have both been really, really close games. So who do you think they would pick right now if you were the coach or GM? And they will have 24 hours after the end of the season to choose their opponent. So in this scenario, let's say they decide they're going to play Boston, that would leave Toronto to play Minnesota. On the other hand, it wouldn't be so far-fetched to think that Minnesota could finish on top, and if they were to finish first, they actually have a 1-2 record against all 3 of the opponents that would be underneath them. So again, we'll just take the 2nd place team out of the running and look at their record against Toronto. And it's identical to Boston. They have the 1 regulation win, 1 regulation loss, and 1 overtime loss against both of those teams. So strange that Minnesota hasn't done well against any of these top teams. So they've really done their damage against the lower teams, Ottawa and New York. But if you were Minnesota, who would you be picking? Would you want to go for, the US-Canada type rivalry, or maybe pick the American champion first or something like that? The implications are interesting. I think that this, would be really interesting if they would open it up to all 4. And as the league goes on further, if the playoffs get a greater number of teams and they let the first place team choose from any of, say, the 5 or 6 teams that make the playoffs beneath them, could make for some really interesting scenarios. And then also for the teams that are finishing in 3rd and 4th, they are at the mercy of the teams ahead of them. So that makes it kind of interesting. Like, if you got picked by a team to play against, does that give you a little extra motivation? Like, yeah, you wanted us, you're going to get us, bring it on, we're going to give you our best. And then for the team that didn't get picked, are they going to feel like, well, they have just as much to prove as the team that got specially selected as the easier team? So just a little bit more intrigue and interest to add to the PWHL as we go through the season. This could change, of course, and these might not be the top 4 teams, but I thought I would just take a look at that statistically to see where it lands right now, and We'll have a look as well at the innovative strategy that they've decided to use for their draft, upcoming draft in the summer, and the format and number one overall pick of the draft. That'll be coming up in the next one, so don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we will see you in that one.